One of the most memorable parts of The Legend of Dragoon for me is its opening cinematic. As the camera fades in, we see a town being bombarded with flaming projectiles. Poor villagers are forced to flee, while their homes are ransacked by an army riding curious mounts. It's a visually striking scene, accompanied by beautiful piano music, which sets the somber mood. I particularly like how the opening introduces us to this medieval fantasy world. It wastes no time showing us that there's an empire willing to stop at nothing to get what they want. We are told that this girl is important to the empire, that they attack the village in order to capture her, and that she's not all she appears to be. Indeed, when the army's commander holds a pearl above her forehead, she responds to it magically. The mystery of this scene serves as an excellent hook to hold the viewer's attention, but it's also underlaid with some fairly interesting dialogue. As the commander walks away, he's approached by a man in a dark cloak. The commander asks the mysterious man whether attacking the village was necessary and wants to know exactly who the girl is, to which the cloaked figure says that it's not his concern. Despite the cruelty of the Empire at work here, this scene shows us that their power isn't absolute, that there are those within the army that question their leaders' decisions and are hesitant to follow through with their orders. The presence of the hooded man also alludes to a much grander scheme at play, and we get all this information from just the first cinematic. It's great storytelling, and is followed by an impressive introduction to our protagonist, Dart. For the past 5 years, Dart has been searching for signs of the Black Monster, a creature that destroyed his hometown, which resulted in the loss of his parents when he was a child. Unfortunately, he has had no success finding the monster, and so he returns to his new home, Celeste. While resting on the outskirts of town, Dart hears galloping in the distance, and sees the army we saw earlier on the move. He is then spotted by 2 soldiers, who question him before they are interrupted by a dragon. The soldiers are immediately scared off, while Dart is knocked around as the dragon swipes at him. Overwhelmed by the dragon's might, Dart is almost crushed before he is rescued by a woman clad in dark blue. As the woman puzzles over why the army would use a dragon to attack a nearby town, Dart runs off, upon realizing that another home of his has been destroyed. If this sounds familiar to the backstory of another certain spiky-haired protagonist, then you wouldn't be wrong for thinking so. It's obvious that Dart is heavily based off Final Fantasy VII's Cloud Strife. After all, their physical appearance and motivations are similar. They both wind up pursuing a silver-haired enemy responsible for a major character death at the end of each game's respective first disc. Final Fantasy VII had a huge impact on popularising JRPGs to a worldwide audience, and I reckon the developers of The Legend of Dragoon were hoping to channel some of that success. While Cloud and Dart are alike in many ways, there are more than a few differences too. Dart's attire, for instance, includes this vibrant red armour, which he wears with these red knee pads that rest above his blue-grey pants. He has a single gauntlet on his left side, and while some may find the asymmetry of his outfit peculiar, apparently this was a common practice among swordsmen throughout history. Leaving one's sword arm exposed gave it more mobility for swinging at an opponent. Personally, I find it neat when developers pay attention to real-life sword fighting techniques, so props to them for trying to be accurate. Dart has a fiery personality to match his red armour. He's brave, passionate, and determined. He has a much more positive outlook on life compared to someone like Cloud when we first meet him. He will often come to the aid of those in need. When he discovers his childhood friend Shana has been kidnapped for unknown reasons, he immediately sets out to free her. Dart's journey takes him far and wide, as he and his companions find themselves embroiled in a civil war which eventually spirals out into a conflict for the entire world. As the title of the game suggests, The Legend of Dragoon is about knights who are chosen by fate to rule over dragons. In essence, a dragoon is a person who has obtained the power to take on certain physical and magical characteristics of their dragon counterparts. The power comes from the dragoon's spirit, a crystallized stone that allows a being of its choice to become a dragoon. The spirit merges with its host, granting them strength, webbed wings, and the resilience of a dragon. Now, I'd be remiss if I did a character study on Dart without mentioning his first transformation scene. About halfway through Disc 1, Dart and his companion Levitz are engaged in a fierce battle against a giant enemy by the name of Kongul. Dart is knocked to the ground and is about to be killed before Rose, the woman with dark hair, returns. I still recall the feeling of pure elation when I first saw this. It was like watching Dragon Ball Z, except now instead of just having to watch characters transform, you got to play as them. From this moment forward, you can activate Dart's Dragoon spirit at will, making him assume a flying, flame-throwing knight. Dart's first magic attack, Flame Shot, has him hurling his sword through the air, charging a ball of fire in front of him before shoulder tackling it to his foe. He finishes his attack by catching his sword after the impact. The animations depicting these transformations and magical attacks are awesome. The characters often roar in excitement as they're charging their attacks, and it's exhilarating to see their wings and magical armor take shape around them when their powers activate. Few games had these kind of sequences back in the late 90s and early 2000s when the game released, so it was quite a special experience in those days. I also want to talk briefly about Dart's theme music. It's perfect for him. It really emphasises the kind of person he is: heroic, brave, and steadfast. When I listen to it, I can't help but feel inspired. You will often hear this music playing in moments when Dart shows his unwavering will or when he triumphs over a great challenge. I should point out though that while Dart has many positive traits, he's not a static character. He does have his share of flaws too, which he eventually manages to overcome as the story progresses. Since losing his parents, Dart has had to carry a lot of emotional baggage. Despite forming a close bond with his childhood friend Shana, he left her to search for the thing that killed his family. The Black Monster's attack on Dart's hometown is what motivated him into becoming a mercenary. It's the driving force behind his life decisions. As a child, Dart was powerless to stop the Black Monster, so he went on a quest to gain power to avenge his parents and to prevent the tragedy from reoccurring. But by relentlessly chasing after the fiend, Dart sacrificed the joys of the present, instead choosing to fixate on the past. The game conveys this idea through his relationship to Shana. Growing up, Dart had always viewed Shana as his little sister. By the time they reunite, the game establishes that Shana has changed during the 5 years since Dart last saw her. She's grown up and matured into a young woman who pines for him. But for most of Act 1, Dart still sees her as a girl who needs protecting. While she's changed, he's stayed the same. Dart's stubborn commitment to the past has stunted his emotional growth. This is brought up several times in scenes with various characters. Surely, the spirit of the White Silver Dragoon gives Dart a secret test of character by taking on Shana's appearance. She questions what Dart is going to do after he finds the Black Monster, to which Dart replies he'll take revenge. In a later scene, with Dart's brother-in-arms and best friend Levitz, the two discuss Shana. Levitz flat out tells Dart that revenge doesn't solve anything, and that he should be focused on the present, not the past. Dart's whole character arc is about realising that there's more to life than vengeance. It's about him learning to let go and move on with people who care and are there for him now. We start to see him come to this realisation as the game goes on. During Act 2, Dart and Rose have a conversation about the black monster, and Dart admits he's not sure anymore what he'll do when he finds the creature. He just wants to know what it is. In a few short sentences, this moment shows us how much wiser Dart has become. His personal journey isn't only about retribution anymore, it's about pursuing truth. Of course, this all comes to a head at the end of Act 3, where the game's major mysteries are laid bare. We find out that Dart's father, Zieg, is still alive and that he's been orchestrating events behind the scenes. We also discover, to Dart's shock and dismay, that the black monster is in fact Rose. The shadowy depictions of the creature in cutscenes are actually Rose in her dragoon form. This reveal leads to the two having a face-off in the desert. They fight, and after acknowledging his strength, Rose offers Dart the chance to kill her. However, he refuses, seeing her not as the monster from his past, but as a misunderstood companion who is on the same road. Some people have criticised this part of the game, as it very quickly resolves Dart's conflict with the black monster. His willingness to forgive Rose for killing his mother only takes place in a few short minutes, despite it being something he has pondered on for years. What you have to bear in mind though is that Dart has already been through a similar journey. In many ways, Dart's conflict with the silver-haired Lloyd prepared him for his confrontation with Rose. After Act 1, Dart and the party chase after Lloyd for killing Levitz and to stop whatever he's planning. When he finally catches up to the man, Dart chooses not to finish off Lloyd because he understands that killing him won't bring his best friend back. So when Dart eventually learns Rose is the black monster, he's basically confronted with the same conundrum he had when facing Lloyd. Either kill the person who caused him tremendous grief and suffering, or try to learn the reasons behind their actions for the sake of the world. Ultimately, Dart chooses the latter, and he comes to understand a great deal about these characters and their motivations. It turns out the world is not as black and white as he thought it was. It's much more complicated than that. In the end, Dart accepts and expresses his feelings for Shana and finally gets closure about his past. His unshakable bravery and loyalty to his friends really stood out to me when playing, and they are the qualities which come to mind when reflecting on his character. You know, it's really unfortunate The Legend of Dragoon never got a sequel. Apparently one was in the works and put into pre-production, but was cancelled. There were also rumours that Dart was going to feature as a DLC fighter for PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. This would have been the character's first appearance in 13 years. But sadly, this wasn't meant to be, since All-Stars didn't perform well enough to introduce any new DLC characters. Despite these setbacks, I still hold out hope that one day we'll get some new Legend of Dragoon content. The game has so much deep lore that I'd like to get stuck into, so expect more videos on this soon. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.